Okay, are you logged in as well? Okay, well, we're going to kick off. It's just about 2:30 in Europe. Of course, very good morning to you if you're in the Caribbean or North or South America. Good afternoon if you're with me in Europe, and good evening if you're in the Middle East, and moving on to Asia and Australia. It's very nice to see you again. I do want to thank our sponsors, IMC Education and Training, but very warm welcome to Crossing Borders, which is the broadcasting streaming service that the IMC launched towards the end of March this year, with the intention of keeping the investment migration industry community together and engaged during this global pandemic, which finally we are starting to come out of our hibernation and starting to enjoy, for most of us, some of the summer weather. If you haven't seen one of these broadcasts before, then please go to our YouTube channel. They're available on demand. So just click onto YouTube and search Investment Migration Council. And whilst you're there, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified of all updated and new videos that we're posting. So remember, in today's session, you can also ask questions. So we normally like and encourage for the audience to ask questions. It keeps this session interactive and puts us and our guest speakers a little bit on the spot. Also in the widget of GoToWebinar, you'll find a handout section, and there's information about the Investment Migration Council, but also about the Education and Training unit. So it's just about 50 viewers with us today, and we try and get through as many questions as we can in the next 45 minutes. We do like to keep you engaged, as I said before, but we're also very interested to know where everybody is from. So I'm going to kick off with a launch before I introduce our speakers. So let's see if we can fiund out where everybody is watching from today. Let's launch that. So if you can take a few seconds, decide where in the world you are, and let us know. So we normally wait for about 80% of people to respond before we stop, and wow, I can already see that it's at 88. So I'm going to close that and share the results with you. So overwhelmingly 36% of you are from the Americas, and in joint second place, Europe and Africa. 21% of you are in the Asia Pacific region, 7% in the Middle East, and nobody is from the Caribbean. So that's really good for us to know. Also, please stick around, because at the end of today's show, you will see a video about how you can get qualified through a special certification in investment migration. So do stay with us. So I'm just going to close that. And back to today's session, we're having a small technical issue with one of our speakers. So we're trying to get Richard Kurland to log into today's session. I'm really hopeful that he can join us very shortly. In the meantime, though, Gerd is with us, and today's session is all about Canada. So happy belated Canada Day. I know that was last week, but I think, you know, it's still not too late to wish our Canadian viewers a happy Canada Day. So we are interested, our audience is certainly interested to know how, you know, North America, but particularly how Canada has been faring during this COVID pandemic. What is in store for Canadian business immigration. There have been numerous changes over the years to the federal program and then to regional programs as well. And to explain all of this to you and to us as well is Gerd Damitz, our speaker, who's a regulated Canadian immigration consultant and of course business strategist with AMIRSALAM and Damitz based in Canada. Some of you may remember that Gerd attended the Investment Migration Forum in Geneva. I think that was last year, and gave a very interesting talk at our Intergovernmental Roundtable. Very good morning to you, Gerd Damitz.
Thank you, Bruno. Nice to see you again, and that you are healthy. And I hope everyone here at the podcast also is healthy and doing well.
Absolutely, it's good. It's good to see you looking so sharp early morning for you today.
I took a cold shower. Thank you.
Good for you. Look, we want to hear all about Canadian immigration, and we've got some polls to keep everybody engaged. So shall we kick off on one of those polls? And let's look at competitive advantages, and let's have a discussion about competitive advantages in attracting business immigration. Let's kick that off, and let's ask our audience: does Canada have an international competitive advantage in attracting business immigration? So yes, no, not sure. Please give us your responses. We're at 75% already, coming up to 78. Don't forget, please ask us any questions in the GoToWebinar widget. If you've got questions for Gerd or for myself at the IMC, really happy to engage with you and go for those. Let's share the responses then. So yeah, 47 people think that Canada has an advantage. Maybe actually tell us what you think that advantage is using the interactive questions widgets. 20% don't think, and 33% think they're not actually sure, so they're not thinking at all. So let me hide that. And Gerd, so what factors determine Canada's competitive advantage for attracting business immigration, and how should that be used really? And maybe you can share with us what you think those are in this day and age.
Well, okay. Well, thank you. In fact, I do believe Canada has a huge competitive advantage in attracting business immigration, and let me explain why I think so. Now, Canada is in competition with countries. So what I'm using now is a kind of framework for determining the national advantage by Michael Porter. Some of you might know him. He's a professor for business at Harvard University. So we have 4 stages to determine a national advantage. The first basic stage is actually factor driven. And if you're looking for the basic factors of selling the product Canada, so what comes in mind, and I believe when you look around, especially at this sometimes crazy times, you might agree Canada has a stable democracy. Further, Canada has an excellent health and educational system, which is run by the provinces, and every province is doing a very good job. Basically, everyone is insured. Transparency is it's something which is visible all over the government. Federal government, provincial government, municipal level. You hardly find any corruption. I never heard of corruption. Maybe there's sometimes the odd case. And then very important is the financial stability, like many of you might recall the banking crisis, 2008, 2009, and well, Canada came out of that very well. That has something to do that Canada has a very sound regulatory framework, and the banks here in Canada are a bit risk averse, which however paid off. Like for example, as you recall, mortgages were the problem at that time. And when you look at the factors like education, I just mentioned it. So all the factors are taken together in many reports run by different organizations. So I just use now the one from US News and World Report. So for quality of life, Canada is #2. And these reports taking into consideration all these factors I just talked about. And it doesn't matter, there's so many different reports, but frankly, Canada is always in the top 5 and usually even leading or in the top 3. Then there's another great advantage. Canada is a huge country, vast country. It's the second largest country in the world, but has a very small population. As of now, we have about 37.5 million
Second country
population.
landmass, right?
Landmass, yes, landmass.
Okay.
And but a very, very small population, only 37 to 38 million people, and they are living only in a land stretch like approximately 150 kilometers along the US border. And with this comes abundant national resources. And the geographic location has many advantages too. The only neighbor Canada has basically is US. If you don't consider some French, I think 2 or 3 French islands outside the Quebec coast. So these are immense factors which are there. And so having said that, you have to move on. You have to use these factors. You have to try to employ them efficiently. And for this, we are coming actually to a second stage, which it means everything is investment driven. It depends, is Canada ready to absorb foreign technology and methods in attracting immigration? Is Canada ready to change its process technology? Is Canada ready to invest aggressively and a large scale on its infrastructures? And yes to all of them. Canada in the last 5 years started to shift to online platforms. So right now, about 80% of all categories, applications are submitted online, and that's of course a very cost-effective processing, and it's very fast. Further, Canada invested into something, it's called a global case management system. This allows very flexible processing. So basically, when you send in an application through your online platform, this can be handled by any officers worldwide. It could be handled by a special unit in Ottawa, which happens a lot of time, but it also could be handled, for example, in Vienna or in Nairobi. So it doesn't really matter. It can be done anywhere in the world. Big advantage. Then and that one, of course, means you having now lower processing times. The processing times used to be in Canada, well, horrific. Like you could wait sometimes up to 8 to 10 years for a permanent residence application. That changed. Right now, the majority of all cases is finalized within 6 months. I mean, unbelievable progress. And for potential immigrants, very, very important. Business immigration takes a little bit longer because of the complexity, and let me talk about this, because that's also a soft factor which was invested in. Canada has about almost 25 different business categories. Most of them are run by the provinces, and there are also the self-employed, the startup, capital visa, the federal programs, but there's some variety which allows really to find for a business immigrant the right province and the right program to immigrate under. Then, of course, Canada has a highly sophisticated labor pool, and that means I put this under the investment driven, because to have that, again, we are coming back to the excellent educational system in which Canada invested in. So, and I talked at the very beginning of this investment driven about the well, to be ready to absorb foreign technology. And this online platforms and express entry, many of these ideas came actually from New Zealand and Australia. And Canada was consulting with them over years, and was not shy to adopt certain processing methods, but not just adopt it, but improve it. So that means Canada is in that stage also has an outstanding position. And then we are getting to the highest stage of countries to be competitive, and that's when you're talking about driven by innovation. Means you are able to address the demand of immigrants which became more sophisticated. You are ahead in marketing and other aspects of competing. And like, for example, Canada is doing, or the provinces, they are traveling around the world. They are doing presentations. They have open access for potential immigrants, and they also push basically state-of-the-art technology also on the provincial side, who all adopted the express entry technology, which, if I may explain this, maybe it's not clear to everyone. This was a big shift from inventory-driven immigration to on-demand driven immigration. Like before, at some point we had, like, I believe, like 500,000 applications in the waiting line, because everybody could apply. And after some restructuring, now everything is on demand. A potential immigrant applicant on the business side and also other economic category, they have to pass some basic barrier and to become registered on something which is called express entry. And so they fulfill the basic requirements for any of these programs. And then the province or the federal government, they evaluate the skills and the parameters of business immigrants, like net worth, for example, like potential investment, but also education, age, language, and they basically evaluate this with points, and then they will have a certain threshold of points, and anyone above this threshold will be invited to apply. And then you have to provide a full application. Before, you just had to render an idea about business immigration. Now you have to come up with a sophisticated business plan. So if you stay a second on this, what we call here innovation driven, means with competing, this superior competing advantage. And I would name for this, for example, CUSMA. That's, you recall NAFTA, that was renegotiated, and it's not actually, you know what, it's not that much different. And a lot of people call it NAFTA 2.0, but okay, the name is, at least here in Canada, it's CUSMA. I think in US they call it USMA. Everybody has his own name, but that's what we are talking about. That's a big advantage. Like, it allows tariff-free market access to the US. So anybody who's here, which is a huge market, and that's an advantage to, for example, Australia, New Zealand. They basically have their own limited market, and then the market access would be aimed to the Asian market, which, however, could be at time restricted and is not conflict-free. Well, talking about conflicts, of course, in Canada, we are watching carefully the Trump government, and that basically led to renegotiating NAFTA and coming to CUSMA. But CUSMA is also important because for fair trade, the World Trade Organization was created. And that's at the moment, and I believe it didn't change yet, boycotted by the Trump government. I believe they have to appoint 2 judges, and they kind of delay so basically World Trade Organization cannot really function in case of any cases in front of a court. And so to have something like this in place, like this CUSMA, is amazing. And when we are looking to Europe, of course, you have a European market. Having said that, there are also problems. Europe, from our view, is very maybe sometimes over-regulated, and you do have your problems with north and south, and but something showing right now at the COVID crisis too, who's paying for that. And I'm monitoring the news. I can see there's progress, but anyway, it's kind of some potential conflicts as well. So
Yeah.
To continue with that, you can also see that Canada is supporting innovation, because when you look at a very recent statistic from Stat Canada, like, immigrants who own companies are almost 10% more likely to introduce an innovative product, and 20% more likely to introduce an innovative process. So so for anyone who wants to be here successful and use and come out with innovative products, Canada would be the place, especially when you're looking at available research facilities. And when you coming back to a study, like, for example, the Wharton School study put Canada as a number 3 in front of any competitor open for business report. In front of any competitor, I mean competitor for business immigration. Number 1 is Luxembourg, number 2 is Switzerland. So clearly they are not qualifying for our discussion right now. So Canada is ahead of every one of the major countries in Europe, ahead of Australia, New Zealand, ahead of US. And Canada also developed global strategies. They introduced the global talent stream for attracting foreign talents, and they have a startup visa program which focuses on innovative entrepreneurs. So that's a big progress in that stage, innovation driven. Now, however, something is missing in the sense of, with all these great factors in place, the global business immigration strategy needs, in my opinion, to expand more. I believe it has to address much more aggressively business succession demands. Like when you look at statistics, like I believe in 2-3 years, about almost 50% of the small, medium business owners are older than 54 years old. So some provinces have included this in their provincial immigration program, but there's no real focus approach, for example, by the federal government. And then, of course, a competitive passive investor program is really missing. And it has been, when was this discontinued? My God, that's already 6-7 years ago. It was discontinued. So since that time, Canada doesn't have any passive investor programs except Quebec, which, however, qualifies only for immigrants who wants to settle in Quebec, and which is on hold right now because of a government change. We want to, I guess, they review the program still. It's however, it will come out and open up again next year, June, if nothing changes. Now, please.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Look, I want to I want to welcome Richard Kurland, and very good morning to you, sir. I know it's extremely early for you, 5:30. So I apologize for kicking off this crossing borders so early, and we are incredibly grateful for you to get out so early if you're not used to doing that. I do want to come to you, Richard, and talk about some of these issues that Gerd has brought up, because I can see you're nodding agreement and you've got some something to add. I'm very sure. But first of all, Gerd, I want to come back to you, and you mentioned Europe is at times a little bit overregulated, and I think that's part of the issue that we have had post 2008 financial crisis. European Commission has done a lot of regulation. We've seen the likes of FATCA, the equivalent in Europe, the CRS, mandatory disclosure rules, AML directives, and so forth. But moving on now, we have some big problems all over the world, particularly in Europe. Unemployment is up, economies are really suffering, and some countries in Europe haven't managed COVID very well. How is Canada? Because you talk about the many advantages that Canada has for business immigration, and we haven't heard a lot on the international news about Canada. So how is Canada? How do you believe that Canada has managed to do better in this pandemic than other business immigration competitors? If you can take 2 minutes to walk us through that, and then we'll go back to the poll about if Canada has a competitive advantage. Good.
Yes, I mean, I'm looking at that from a bipartisan with a bipartisan approach, and I think really Canada did very well. Canada spent so far about $170 billion, which is a lot of money. However, Canada really is in the position to do so, because when you look at the net government debt in comparison to the GDP, to the gross domestic product, Canada always had one of the lowest in comparison with US, UK, and other major European countries. And as I said before, the banks are very stable. So Canada has probably one of the best platforms you can have to counter such a crisis. And I just mentioned Canada spent about $170 billion. And when you look at the report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer, just to give you some highlights from this money, 70 million, for example, were spent for the Canada Emergency Response Benefits. That's basically for employers who have to qualify, but they would get $1,000 each week. $500 each week as a benefit. And this was just recently extended for 8 weeks. Then you have another about $56 billion, which was used for the program Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, which allows qualifying companies to get a subsidy of 75%. So, and then of course there are many others like students, help for agriculture sector, air transportation, etc. But these are the major components. And of course, whatever happens now is to help people kind of to recover faster. And when you look at the measurements, which are social distancing and wearing masks, Canada, I think in comparison, has been doing this a little bit more structured and organized as other countries. Right now, still, we are still in the middle of a pandemic, so we are still watching. I just read in the morning Israel, who basically was like under 10 cases, has now 1,000 cases again, and they opened in April. So of course you have to be careful, you have to watch everything, you have to react on this. So Toronto and Montreal introducing now mandatory wearing of masks when you go into shops and so on. So and Canada also is participating in research on a vaccine. We are talking about the messenger RNA approaches, which are the most promising one. And I think Germany has 2, US has 2 companies searching for that, and one of the companies is also in Canada. So Canada is active on this frontage as well. And so I believe when we are reopening, we do it very carefully, and we will come out much better as many other countries.
Thank you, Gerd. You've talked a lot about the many initiatives that Canada is either pioneering or is contributing on the global stage to fight this what is essentially a very nasty respiratory disease. All this has to be paid for somehow, and this is where I want to bring Richard Kurland in. Richard, you're an immigration lawyer, an eminent immigration lawyer, but you are also, of course, a policy analyst. You've contributed to print and electronic media. You've appeared and are well connected within the Canadian parliamentary system. You're a member of the Quebec Bar and the Law Society of British Columbia. But overall, you're the editor-in-chief of LexBase, the Canadian immigration law and policy publication. So, Richard, my question or our question, to you is this massive COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, however you want to call it, has a bill and it needs to be financed and paid for. What measures do you know the Canadian government is undertaking to help finance this, and what suggestions maybe you have also in the discussions that you're having with your Canadian parliamentary system in being innovative in finding ways? How can business immigration or investment migration potentially contribute to this massive bill?
Oh, how's this? We're good?
That's very good. Thank you, Richard.
No, thank you. Again, it's an honor and a delight to again be with everyone, albeit by technology instead of in person. My preference is in person. Always a wonderful experience. So the macro view. what's critical as the first point is the political macro. Let's remember that there's a minority government, there's no majority, and no single party controls the House of Commons in Ottawa. Consequently, the views of the minority opposition groups must be taken into account in the formulation of national immigration strategy as it pertains to quote unquote fundraising capability. Our New Democratic Party, which is known as a left of center party, has traditionally been opposed to business immigration, period. And this is the roadblock in bringing in passive investor immigration to provinces outside Quebec. The combination of not just COVID, the combination of COVID plus the energy sector price declines are the deadly twins that have savaged the Canadian economy. In the result, some provinces have been adversely impacted more than others. I'm talking about the prairie provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan specifically. Because immigration in Canada is a shared jurisdiction, there's only two shared jurisdictions in our Constitution, agriculture and immigration, the provinces have leeway, legally and politically, to request a passive investor program. That's why Quebec has one, everyone else does not. The Quebec program, while still active, still in process, still processing investor cases, has temporarily shut down intake until the chicken is absorbed in the python. The inventory is processed within a reasonable period of time. So moving on. Who's going to pay?
Before you do move on, do you think that the federal government will consider reinstating a passive investment migration program?
Well, there we go. And that's the point of the move. Some provinces such as Alberta have a strong desire for passive investor programs as long as the target for capital is politically acceptable, nationally and provincially. So let's not forget that in charge of Alberta, the premier, top dog position in the province, is the former national immigration minister, Jason Kenney, under the Harper government. And Mr. Kenney knows full well the advantages of a passive investor program. What stopped the clock was the perceived abuse. What will not happen in future is the capability of an individual to cut a check, get a visa, run home with Canadian status, parking family members in Canada, paying no taxes. I think that ship has sailed. Looking forward to a brighter future for the possibility of a passive investor program in Canada would be the following criteria. First, the amount of capital to be invested likely would constitute a donation in the sense that the capital would not be returned. The amount is a political guess, anywhere between 500,000 Canadian to 800,000 Canadian should be an appropriate benchmark. The aim would be to not hand out the candy when you hand over the money. Instead, perhaps temporary residence in the selected province of destination for 1 year, 2 years would be provided to the primary applicant and the accompanying dependents. What triggers permanent residence? Eligibility is satisfied not just with the payment of the money and temporary status in Canada, with the obligation to reside in that province about 8 months out of a calendar 12-month period, but here's the catch. Mandatory filing of a Canadian income tax return as a Canadian tax resident on December 31st of that calendar year. Once you have filed and reported your global income, your global property, you will be converted from temporary status to permanent resident status. That just seems fair. Yes, on the one hand, millionaires wishing to live a millionaire lifestyle in Canada will pay a series of consumption taxes rather than income taxes. And that in the past has been a political salve, it worked. but going forward, I don't think the public's going to buy it. So it makes more sense to come to Canada, pay the money, reside there, and pay taxes there. How you structure this before and after is a question for the tax professionals, but for political consumption, I think that's a good system. The absolute chocolate cake in all of this is, where should the money go? And for optics, the proposal would be to take this capital, take the province of destination, accumulate the number of dossiers within that province in order to every year, each year, construct from scratch a seniors residence home. This would immediately, during an economic hard period, create employment in the trade sectors. It would resolve a long-term demographic challenge, taking care of seniors. Many of these senior homes were brutally attacked by COVID. Their structures are unsound for medical purposes. Replacements must be made. And depending on the number of people heading to a particular province, that's the budget to construct a new seniors residence. So it's not hard to see how, for example, in Alberta, 300 units a year could build a fresh senior home every year in select parts of the province. The numbers would be significantly higher in other provinces, particularly British Columbia, which is a key destination for the target market. As well, there's some political candy on the table. A government can use the construction of a seniors residence establishment in a political riding they wish to reward and attract votes for the next election, or a political riding which delivered the votes and the government of the day wishes to retain those votes for the next election. Again, in British Columbia, for example, it's a knife edge governing situation where the government is there courtesy of one vote from an opposition member. So Canada has been fractured these last couple of years politically. It's a minority situation in most areas, save Alberta. And that's going to impact on how we can have passive investment schemes. Atlantic Canada is a good target for these schemes because they need the money, they need the seniors residents, and they sure need the people. They are nimble, they have new programs, they are considering this kind of thing, as well as Manitoba. So last thing before I pass the baton, there's a third factor that I trust everyone is well aware. Hong Kong. There's likely, and I mean likely almost frivolously, going to be an announcement from our Prime Minister's office in Canada regarding facilitated migration from Hong Kong. This is due to what will soon be the greatest human capital harvest in recent memory. We're going to attract and retain young people. The profile is this, and it's quick. From what I've seen based on meetings not in government that I've held here and abroad, you have families in Hong Kong, either they came to Canada in the 90s and returned, or they didn't come to Canada in the 90s and they're still there. 30, 40 years ago, the families bought 3 or 4 condos in Hong Kong. And as many in the room are aware, 100 square meter condo in Hong Kong is in excess of $900,000 easily. So the plan is sell one condo, get a child to Canada permanently. What's different is that in the past, so in 89 or the 97 or the 99 transitions in that region, people just wanted status as the insurance policy in case things go south. Well, not today, not in Hong Kong. This is a permanent exit. They're not going to come back and do business, not now, not with the Beijing security law and other factors that will crunch down in the near future. So this is an exodus. There's room for passive investment programs. But the key here is, for business purposes, for your immigration marketing strategists, is an attract and retain the clients long term. The way in is going to be temporary status to Canada. There may be facilitated flips to permanent residence through business investments, let's call them that, in Canada. So you are now going to have to keep a roster of businesses that do become available in provinces that are not medium-sized or large, small, that can be used for immigration purposes in anticipation of a rule change. You may also need to track your individual client over a 3 to 5 year period to assist them in this change. This is going to be a massive shift. There is a brand new market where none existed before. And these investments are critical to push back in most of Canada against the cost burden of COVID. This is easy finance. My back of the napkin calculations put it at $2 to $3 billion per year of cash. And you can do the math for what 2 to 3 billion will buy you in loans if you're a government, and this just pays for interest, which is rather low. So this is a remarkably easy way for governments to foot the bill for literally $40–50 billion a year in interest payments off loans. That's irresistible. And in provinces that are oil-based, energy-based, I think that's a clear impetus to bring back in the soft sectors and trades, using the real estate, the seniors residence devices to push up government benefits. So that's the lay of the land.
Thanks, Richard. I want to come back actually to the point you've just closed on, is seniors residence, and we've had a few questions about this, and ultimately what people are asking is why seniors residences, in actual fact.
Very
give
good.
us a detail?
That's a bullseye question right there, and that's because seniors residence, the care of seniors and health in Canada, arguably is a shared jurisdiction as well between the province and the feds. So there's political candy at two levels of government available when they make their pitch to voters. More importantly, from a practical standpoint, is the layers of regulation surrounding seniors residences. You can't run those things in the absence of heavily regulated operations from the municipal level, the provincial level, and the national level. In addition, the construction of these seniors residences, which is always an issue, is by public tender. So there's no backdooring capital indirectly to those that provided the capital. That's just not going to fly. Further, on a go forward, operationally, these seniors residences are under strict government regulations. So there's no fooling around in how you operate. Some British Columbia and other provinces have seen what happens when you allow private sector to take hold of these things. It's not good for the residents. So that's why seniors residence, you've got political candy, controlled expenses, a controlled operation, politically popular, addressing an immediate need created by COVID. So it looks like a winner to me.
All right. Okay. And then, Gerd, I just want to come back to you on business immigrants again. And we've had some questions coming in. I think notably the one that has come up, and this is one I had as well, is maybe you can just explain or briefly describe what this shift in approach is you're seeing or is coming through the requests, maybe from your clients for successful business immigrants. Now, I hope that sort of makes sense in the way I've sort of put together a few questions.
Yes. Okay. I mean, I'm preparing business plans as well, and for me, it's very clear that something like COVID, which is a systemic risk, has to be considered. It it was always written on the wall, but we ignored this. And I think COVID opened our eyes, and this is still ongoing. And the sad thing is, it can happen tomorrow again. So you have to consider this. So that means you have to basically reimagine your business model, and in doing so, when you focus on the value chain of a business, which means like your inbound logistic, your operations, outbound logistic, marketing, sales, and service, you will. I believe there's one thing which emerged. It's the digital transformation. Everybody talks about this and has been doing it, but really COVID accelerated the shift to digital technology a lot. And look at us, right? and so when you consider this, what's happening now and what probably will stay, because it has its advantages business-wise as well. So we can look in, for example, that there's a trend too, and if you want to be successful, you really should consider this, that you remote selling, that you have an attractive online product presentation, fast, user-friendly online ordering systems, and just consider also the consumer behaviors. Like for example, I'm just watching like a bakery in our neighborhood. They didn't have business, people didn't walk in and so on. Then they picked up as many others, and they do walk pickup with EMT payments to the private address. Now that can be professionalized. This can be considered. You have to have that ready. Or for retail stores, how do you get the people in such a crisis? So it has to be one way, of course, attractive, but also you have you have to consider maybe from the beginning air circulation filter systems, again, not just for COVID, but in general, because this can happen again. And to do this later on, it will be almost impossible. So you should do it when you are setting up a business, otherwise it will be more expensive. That you have mask disinfection ready at the entrance. That's something you might be able to plan now for later, because we had a problem even to get a mask. And but I believe the supply is now better there. And so then the second huge thing in digital and the change with digital transformation is the remote work. And there has been here in Canada, somebody did a survey, and frankly, like 70% of the people liked it and they didn't want to go back. So since this has an advantage for the employer, you should really consider this actively and maybe make it happen, because you get access to a much larger potential labor pool. Like when we are sitting here in Toronto, theoretically you could hire someone in Halifax, Nova Scotia, because he has that certain skill set, or you could hire someone in Malta because they have that skill set, or in Geneva or wherever. So also, of course, you are decreasing your fixed cost, and the fixed cost is what's basically breaking you. Our own office, we had fixed cost of about $5,000–6,000 a month. We are a small office, but for us it's a lot of money. So this is something we were able to change, and also there's, by the way, some help from the government, from the Canadian government, but that's something you should consider before. So I believe in the future businesses will look for smaller premises, and this remote work will stay to a part, and the digital transformation will stay and be very much accelerated.
All right. Okay. I'm conscious of the time, gentlemen. Respectful of the audience, of course. I want to go back to Richard and your suggestion for the passive investment program. What what would be the quota and the suggestion that you make? And then secondly, what about business experience? Would this cover the retirees who potentially would be investing in the senior residences that you've mentioned? So a little bit about the quota, please, and about business experience, if you wouldn't mind, sir.
Yep, two key factors, business experience and quotas. That makes or breaks a market. The idea is to strip away needless processing points. Business experience, I don't think, should be a relevant consideration, exactly because what you want is to know source of funds, and you want to know the target investment. So source of funds already is outsourced to independent third parties authorized by government. That should not be an issue. Quota is key. Not just quota, but the magic Quebec formula. You assign quota to financial institutions. Those financial institutions in turn assign quota to their agents and sub-agents. The motive: as long as government receives high quality files with little or no issues from an immigration security background standpoint, the quota is repeated the subsequent calendar year. Where a financial institution fails to deliver, that quota is reduced, and that self-motivates the financial institution, who in turn will self-motivate their agents and sub-agents. So without regulation, without finger pointing, it's possible to deliver high-quality product to government that does not represent a challenge to Canada's immigration program. The numbers, I think that looking at the past, an annual quota should preferably settle at 4,000 cases a year, which is a nice number. It's past practice. The existing financial institutions will have the head start. Financial institutions with Canadian experience, that protects Canadian interests, but there's always room for new players to keep the Canadian players in line. So that's the fast answer.
Okay, and that would be picked up 4,000. Doesn't seem a lot to me, that given the popularity of Canada. I would think in just a few weeks, the program would probably be full with applications.
And Bruno, I absolutely agree with you. And what's the magic sauce for that? Up the price.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. Okay, good, gentlemen. We've got 2 more polls. We've had, a little over, nearly an hour now, but I did want to launch this, and we are literally just, we're going to ask our audience: is there a market for Richard's suggestion of a new passive investment program? So get clicking, please, and let's see what everybody has to say. So we're at 50% of votes, 70%. Remember, we stop at 80, 75, and here we go. We're at 80% of the votes, and I'm going to publish that straight away. And Richard, music to your ears.
Wow. Send it to Ottawa.
We'll send them a recording of this Crossing Borders program so that they can see for themselves what our audience has said. And I want to finally go back to another poll which we launched at the beginning, and let's do a comparison of what those results were before. And we talked about, does Canada have an international competitive advantage in attracting business immigration? Now, if you remember, we had 85% of people responded. I'm going to give you 3 more seconds, and we'll close and publish and compare. All right, let's close that. Let's share those results with everybody. And oh, that's interesting. Can Gerd and Richard, can you see the results on your screen?
Oh,
Yeah.
no surprise here. It's Canada's judicial system that enforces contracts, and our political system, where you're not grabbed off the streets for political purposes, is an interesting living experience. So, no surprise.
I think that's quite interesting, because what we had before, we had 47 of respondents said yes when we launched at the beginning of this session, and 33 were not very sure, and then 20% said no. But overwhelmingly now you have 100%. So you gentlemen have done your job in letting us all know the advantages of doing business and emigrating to Canada. I have to wrap up here. And it's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you both and to welcome you to this Crossing Borders program. Thank you very much to the audience for joining us. I hope you found today's session as interesting as I did. If you're not a member of the IMC, please visit our website for information on joining and supporting our work. And of course, for daily updates on what's happening in the industry right now. Lots of change coming up. We'll be back tomorrow. That's Thursday, the 9th of July, 2020. Same time, 2:30 Central European time, as we are every Wednesday and Thursday. And we'll be looking at and discussing European residency programs and what's happening in Europe. And we'll particularly be looking at Greece, Portugal, and the beautiful island of Malta, which was mentioned during today's show. Thank you very much once again for joining us. I want to thank my panelists. Again, a very good day ahead to you, Richard Kurland and Gerd Damitz in Canada. My name is Bruno Lecuyer, and I will leave you here with our investment migration education and training video.
Bye-bye. Bye, Richard. Bye, Bruno. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Introducing the Certification in Investment Migration from the Investment Migration Council, the first structured learning product of its kind globally, designed for you. Explore the bite-sized learning pathway of each module on our custom online platform. You can track your progress as you go and learn at a pace that suits you, with an estimated 5 hours of study time per module. The Certification in Investment Migration contributes to the development of professional competencies and standards for those new to or already working in the industry. So, what are you waiting for? Visit our website to start your learning journey today.